I think we are ready. You can start off. Not a problem. 10:30. Sir, PN sir, shall we start, sir?
It's 10:30, I think.
Yeah, please go ahead. Professor Shambhuling, please.
Namaskara, Shubhodaya, ladies and gentlemen, a hearty welcome to the resource persons and the participants to the day 3 of 1 week online faculty development program on exemplary practices in teaching, learning, and evaluation of courses in computer science and information technology. This FDP, jointly organized by one of India's largest technological universities, Vishweshwaraya Technological University's Center for PG Studies Kalburgi, and Indian Institute of Information Technology Allahabad, one of premier technical institutes in India. I request all the participants to mute their audio and video. I wish you a very happy learning. Now I request Dr. Shubhangi, Program Coordinator, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, CPSCPTS Kalburgi, to take over this session. Over to you, madam.
Good morning to all. I am on for exemplary session, a strong academician and a true researcher, Professor Shekhar Verma. Professor Shekhar Verma has received his BTech and MTech and PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, BHU, Varanasi. Sir is currently working as a professor in Information Technology at Indian Institute of Information Technology, Allahabad. Sir has published more than 100 research papers in reputed international journals and more than 150 papers in international conferences. Sir has supervised more than 20 PhD scholars and handled many R&D projects. Sir is a member of Machine Learning and Optimization Group at IIIT Allahabad. His research interests include manifold regularization, privacy-preserving machine learning, and deep learning techniques. So on the behalf of VTU and IIIT Allahabad, I welcome you and thanking you for accepting our invitation as a distinguished speaker for exemplary session, sir. Thank you. It's my privilege to present Professor M.G. Venkatesh Murthy as a presiding chair for today's session. For the distinguished speaker for exemplary session, Professor Shekhar Verma. Sir is born in the year 1949 in Hassan town. Had his schooling in Hassan. Sir did BE in Electrical Engineering from University of Mysore during 1971. Did his MTech in Computer Technology from Indian Institute of Technology during year 1978. Obtained his PhD degree from Anna University, Chennai in the field of Artificial Intelligence during 1989. Sir joined the Malnad College of Engineering during 1971 and after serving in all capacities as assistant professor, head of the department, principal for 2 terms and director for technical, he attended retirement during December 2010. Since his retirement from regular services, Sir is working as a director technical at Navkis College of Engineering, Hassan, an institution from the House of Ramaya, Bangalore. Also at present, Sir is a member of the Executive Council of Vishweshwaraya Technological University, Belgavi. In the past, Sir has been president of VTU during 2004 to 2008. Also, he has been the member of faculty of engineering as well as the dean of engineering for 2 terms at the University of Mysore. Sir has been a member as well as the chairman of boards of studies as well as examiner at many universities many times. Sir has published a couple of books in the field of computers. Also, he has published a many number of technical papers in national as well as international technical journals. During his term as a principal at Malnad College of Engineering, the college was declared as one of the best engineering college in India in the year 2007. Also, Dr. M.G. got Best Principal Award during 2007. He was responsible in bringing the autonomous status to Malnad College of Engineering. So, on behalf of VTU and IIIT Allahabad, I welcome you, sir, and I wholeheartedly thanks for accepting our invitation as a presiding chair. Over to Shambhuling, sir.
Shubhangi madam.
Thank you, sir. Namaste.
Thank you, Shubhangi madam, for giving succinct profiles of these ladies. Now I request presiding chair of session 1 of day 3, Professor M.G. Venkatesh Murthy, to take over charge of the session. Over to
Good morning to everybody. My best wishes to Dr. Karisidappa in his absence and Dr. P.N. Kulkarni and all the speaker, Shekhar Verma, and all the members who are sitting over here. I'm really honored to chair this session. And Professor Shekhar Verma has been introduced by Shubhangi. Now I request Shekhar Verma to take over and speak on the subject. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for the nice introduction. I thank the Vice Chancellor, VTU, and my own very own director, Professor P. Nagabhushan, for giving me this opportunity. And I'm really honored to have Professor Venkatesh Murthy as my chair. I believe he was just born after independence. And I also see that he was a very, very first PhD in artificial intelligence when artificial intelligence was not artificial intelligence of what we think about it today. So let me start, and I have been teaching machine learning and subjects for the past 4 years since it was introduced in IIIT Allahabad as an elective. And I have some very interesting experience, I would say some more of a romantic interest with machine learning. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen and then see what I can really do. So let me start. Javed, can you help me?
Sir, please.
Sir.
I think it was
Sir, no.
the entire screen, and then
Yes, sir.
let me see if I have.
रिमूव ಮಾಡನ ಸರ್
जावेद ध्वनि के कमरे चले जाइए ना.
To share my experience with teaching ML and ML-like courses. And what makes it different is that people wish to apply it as soon as you have it. So it's in the market and we are in a position to apply it. And when we are applying it, then we find that it's really naive. The field is naive, yet the application is high. The journalists are writing about it. The papers are full of it. Every industry, every employer wants engineers who know machine learning and the like. Every student wants to learn it, but nobody knows what it is. So it's like this. The industry thinks it's my silver bullet. The students thinks that it is my silver bullet to a great job. The teacher thinks it's my silver bullet to a great research. Everybody has his own view of this machine learning. But we know now that machine learning is not a silver bullet. Unfortunately, how to teach machine learning is also scarce. And why it is scarce, we'll see as we go by. And we still do not know why students want to study it. We still do not know what is to be studied. We still do not know how to teach it. We still do not know what should be the takeaway from this particular course. And what knowledge do the teachers should have so that they are able to deliver it successfully to the students. So we start looking at these students, our own students who have been learning and seeing and taking this particular course. So we look at the students and find that they have a computer science background. They have an IT background. They're good in programming. They're good in algorithms, but not all of them. Not all students coming from bioscience, students coming from electronics, they do not have all the prerequisites. The mathematics and statistics as it was taught does not have the depth. We just skim the surface. And whether it's going to be applied in legal field or it's going to be applied in society, it's going to be applied in social sciences, whether it's going to be applied in medical sciences or in an area that we do not know, we simply do not know. So domain knowledge is largely absent. So what are the students? Why are these students taking it? The students think this is algorithms. Somebody says this is mathematics. Somebody says, no, practice is everything. This is programming. Somebody says it's a tryst with statistics. It's tryst with randomness. Somebody says it solves everything. It's flat and nice, solves everything. And what is going to happen is that this will give me a good job and a good life. But remember, none of these are machine learning. Machine learning is the elephant. It has everything into it. So how to correct this particular narrow vision, a unidimensional vision? Look at the students. When we look at the students, we find that full of enthusiasm. They are expecting a lot from this particular course. But the problem is not just the lack of conceptions. They are full of misconceptions about ML. Obviously, thinking that this is going to be the silver bullet, they're motivated, but they're also filled with false hopes. They think that world is going to change because of ML, and they'll be changing the world. And what happens is when we are teaching it nowadays to computer science, IT people, they don't have holistic view. They have not seen a system. So they don't have the experience and knowledge of system level thinking. They are into algorithms. They are not into systems. They are into analysis. They are not into design. So now look at the faculty. Look at me. I started seeing inward. I am growing with ML. My industry exposure was 35 years back. I have not seen a domain. I'm very enthusiastic about ideas and proof of concept. But do I take that idea to its logical conclusion, building a system? No. As a teacher and a researcher, I am more into narrower and narrower. I am not into pre-processing. I am not concerned whether the data is coming from a camera or the data is coming from a human being or the data is coming from an EEG. I am just looking at the algorithms. I am not concerned with the pre-processing. I am not concerned with the post-processing. I am hardly bothered about the end-to-end solutions. So what should I do? So the first thing the teacher looks at, do I have the pedagogical knowledge or pedagogical content knowledge or the PCK to deliver it to the students? Now, what is PCK? It's the knowledge needed by me as a teacher to teach a particular subject matter. Do I have that? But before that, what is it with respect to machine learning? So number one, do I have the representations of all the concepts of machine learning? Can I look at machine learning teaching from a distance? Can I have the complete landscape? Do I have analogies? Do I have examples from everyday life domain to teach machine learning and relate to the conception or to the dream that the student has? Do I know what is difficult and what is banal, what is trivial in machine learning? What is to be emphasized upon and what is to be skimmed through? Do I know what does the student lack? He knows algorithms, he knows programming, he knows mathematics, he knows statistics, but does he know the concepts? Do I know what are his preconceptions? the misconceptions of the students about this particular course? Do I know how to assess my knowledge? Do I know how to assess the student? Do I know what are the common mistakes that learners make while applying machine learning? It's not learning machine learning, but when you have learned machine learning, how do you apply it to the real world? Do I know? So if I knew these things, and if I could discover these things, and we could train the teacher into these things and tell him that these are the things that the students should learn, these are the things that the students come with as a prior, a wrong prior or a meaningless prior, then probably I'll be in a position to teach machine learning more effectively, and the students would learn machine learning more effectively. So where do I start? How do I start? So I start when I look at a fresh, naive student coming, and I look, what does he have? So I look at the first stage. The student has a lack of understanding. He has lots of misunderstanding. So what is a lack of understanding? So the problem is that the student does not know about machine learning. And this distinguishes the student from the rest. He has a lack of understanding rather than misunderstanding. This is my discovery over the last 4 or 5 years. There are preconceptions which are more about, and they have been formed because of the reputation of machine learning rather than how machine learning works. So if you do not know the nuts and bolts of machine learning, you learn it only from the media. So from the media, you learn about AlphaGo. You learn about machines defeating Kasparov in chess. You talk about self-driving cars. You think that this is some magic which is going to happen. And this comes from the sensational media that you have. But news does not help, my friends. It makes as if computer has a brain. It makes us think that computers think like us. And students start identifying ML as a revolution, as a next best thing, which is entirely wrong. As teachers with white beard and silver mane would say, that's just an evolution. It is not something which is revolutionary. It is not computer science. It is not IT. It is not electronics. It's not maths. It is something else. But it was always there. It has just come to the fore just now. Now, when you have a reputation that you're a cure-all, you're a panacea, you're a silver bullet, then the students either become over-optimistic, but this over-optimism also drives them towards taking this particular course. This drives them through the course. So this lack of understanding can be a boon instead of being a bane. But then, how do we really start? So we know that the students have a lack of understanding, and whatever they have learned is from their friends who are equally naive. They have learned from the media, which is jazzy. So they have a lot of lack of understanding. So when we start, let's see how do we start. So my understanding is that we should have a unistructural understanding. We should start from one aspect. So we should start from the simpler, intuitive, interpretable machine learning algorithms. We should see if they can describe, trace through the algorithm, interpret the algorithm, identify the outputs. And we have ML algorithms which do not require an engineering background. All that they require is a high school background, intuition basically, something which is very intuitive like K nearest neighbor, decision tree, which they have been doing without knowing. So we start with a single aspect techniques, something that can be interpreted and visualized well. That's something that does not require a lot of maths, a lot of algorithmic practice. And what happens is that the student is able to learn quickly. He's happy. As soon as he's happy, we challenge him. we say that here is something that is more abstract. So much abstract that it challenges your intuition. It challenges all that you have learned. So we have support vector machine which challenges you. Can we do something in a space which we cannot see? Can we do this in a space in which we need not go but still do it? Can we learn from experience? Can we make machine learn from experience, which is reinforcement learning? Can we have a large neural network, which is a black box? Something which is difficult to visualize, hard to interpret, and requires a lot of prerequisites of statistics, programming, algorithms, mathematics, your own domain knowledge into it, but challenges your intuition. So as we are warming up, we say that this is not enough. Nuts and bolts do not make a system. So what should we do? We say, okay, we'll have multi-structural aspects, several independent aspects. We move from an algorithm to a model. Now, this is interesting. What is an algorithm? We all know. What is a model? In machine learning, we try to impress upon. We say, for example, if in data set, two classes are linearly separable, that means they can be separated by a straight line, then the straight line is the model. What is the model? The thing that the parameters that the machine has learned is the model. The straight line hyperplane is the model, or the support vectors are the model. So we say that now you are not talking of algorithms, you are talking of the parameters that you have learned, the model that you need to generate. For that, we say, okay, compute a baseline, take a baseline system, implement an algorithm, not just an algorithm, make a model. And you don't need to go inside the black box, do it with a black box. But more importantly, see how you train it, how you test it. And the most important is something that we gloss over, the teachers gloss over. Camera is a feed, we forget. How do we handle the camera? How does the feed change into input? So what we do is, without going to the nitty-gritties of the algorithm, he has a fair idea of one aspect of the algorithm. So now we start joining different things, use a black box approach to machine learning. So what are the phases? We take data, which is more important, the most important thing. We say we take the data from a camera or an EEG. How do you prepare the data? How do you prepare it so that it can be input into the machine or into the model? How do you clean the data? How do you know what is noise? How do you know that noise is which we did not want? What we thought is data is actually noise, and what is noise is actually data. How do we make sure that we do not throw the baby with the bathtub? How do we know that we are not throwing the information out together with the data? So we should know how to clean data. Cleansing is very important. What are the approaches? How do you plan for training and testing so that there is no learning by rote? Tell them what is learning by rote. Tell them what is bias. Tell them what is variance. Tell them what is a trade-off. Tell them how do you cross-validate. Tell them that model is something which has generalized. Tell them that model has not just memorized. As we students and we teachers have been forcing the students all along, right from their kindergarten to engineering to all learning, learning has become a rote. So, but learning is not a rote. Learning is not memorization. We'll have to tell them how does the machine generalize and does not learn by rote. How do we train? How do we evaluate is what becomes important. So we take the focus away from the inner working of the algorithm, focus on teaching its applications, and ask them to work with libraries. If they're trained in coding, they need to understand the documentation. Connect the functions with the arguments so that there is no garbage in and garbage out. And the faculty has to really handhold the students, because the students who have done a programming course are not able to appreciate working with libraries. They think that they can gloss over this. No, you cannot gloss over machine learning libraries. For example, if you look at TensorFlow, you look at PyTorch, you look at Latte, you look at Caffe, all of them require that you walk through the code. You learn from the code. You need to tune the code. So the students then have a problem, and they don't need to develop an algorithm, but at least how work with the black box and learn how to use the black box. Ultimately, when they go to the industrial, they'll be solving a problem. They will not be developing algorithm, at least most of them. They'll learn to work with the black box. And not just that, it's not that you have a data set and you have a black box and you just throw the data into the black box and get something meaningful. No, you must learn how to implement. And I found that the students have a difficulty in communicating and reflecting what the output means. What happens when the data is not conditioned properly? What happens to the data output, and the student is not able to reflect, is not able to communicate, is not able to appreciate these. The third stage, we come quickly and see, as soon as he has an idea of all these things, we go to the fourth stage. We start integrating. And when we integrate, it's not making a model, it's tuning the model.
Why? Why, Javed?
Sir, 1 minute, sir.
Ah,
So I think sir got disconnected. So please wait for 1 minute, sir is connecting. Yeah.
For those who have joined in late, there is small technical glitch. Please wait.
could you fix up, Javed?
Sir, I'm working with Shekhar sir. I will just get back to you, sir.
Okay. Yes, Shekhar is visible.
Sorry for the interruption. This is organizing chair Kulkarni here. Before Professor Shekhar Verma gets back, there's one interesting chat that has come up. Okay, so it's from Professor Usman Aizaz. He says, sir, it's really interesting and informative. Sir, not only students, even faculties are facing a lot of difficulty in teaching this subject. Even we have not understood it properly. Please give us guidelines. How can faculties learn and understand this subject? Yeah, this we are truly aware, and in that intention only we have taken up this FDP. There is a lot more to come in this particular FDP on such issues.
Yes.
Yeah, Professor Shekhar Verma is back. Thank you.
Yes, audible.
You're audible, sir.
I'm trying to share my screen and then I'll just see if I
Sudhir, help out.
Yes, sir. Sir, at the bottom of the screen, right side, you have an option present now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Entire screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Meanwhile, what I'll do is there's some problem in the screen. I'll speak and sharing my screen is not sharing at all. So,
sir, you click on present now option.
Sir, it has
Then
come,
your
so
entire
I'm
screen.
sharing it.
Yes,
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes.
Yes, it
Yes,
is
sir,
come.
visible.
What I'll do is I'll just start from wherever I left. So
Yes.
I said that what we are going to do is we are going to work away and focus not on the inner working of the algorithm, but we focus on teaching its applications. As soon as we do that, the student is able to understand the input and output and how do we really deal with domains. And the student is now able to have a holistic view of the entire system, the entire model. And then the student is able to work with libraries, and the student then is now ready for integration and is ready to design and build a system. So now what we found was, I found in the class was this relational goal in which the student was really asked to combine his skills and build a model and tune a model and make his own features was the most difficult thing. The student was not able to relate the real life output to the computer input and output. How does a camera feed turn into a vector? How does a softmax output or a label turn into an output is something that really flabbergasted him. And then how to tune parameters was something that the student is not able to fathom. So now we say the features have to be created by you. The data has to be cleaned by you. You must know the domain to know the input. You must know the domain to know the output. As soon as we start saying this, then the student is again into a quagmire. He is not able to understand why something which he had thought and he had come with a conception that is something I'm not able to understand. The machine is not doing everything I have to do. I have to change the input. I have to change the output. For example, I have to change the raw text into a bag of words. I have to change numericals, images into numeral values, something which is difficult. He has to know, he says, okay, now I have to know much natural language processing. So, and then we tell him, you are the best judge. You have to do it. This input and output cannot be taught properly. You can have just general guidelines relating life, real life, to computer input and output. And then the student is asked, now you have to tune the parameters, avoid overfitting, avoid underfitting, avoid learning by memorization, ensure generalization. This is something that is difficult to really get into the students. I think this was one of the most difficult tasks. Student was not ready to understand that it's the person who is the human being who's actually guiding the model machine learning algorithm. It's not the machine which is doing anything difficult. So this was a difficult concept to drill into the student. Optimizing the model was another very difficult thing that the student could not really understand. He did not understand that after learning algorithms, after learning mechanism, after learning programming, he'll have to do so much to get something out of the student. So the students are clueless most of the time to explain the output, to really condition the input, and to understand the black box. So he is almost in dark after learning, because he's dark, because he's not able to explain the output. And this is something which needs to be taught gently, and through a lot of practice, the student learns this. So now we go back and say, okay, revise your prerequisites, go into more and more details of your algorithm, brush your algorithms again, brush your maths once again, brush your worldly view once again. So then once he is ready with this, he has to go beyond. He has to break the glass ceiling. The teacher has to see, can he go beyond the blue sky and now solve open domain problems? Can he do that? We start looking at this. So we start giving the students open-ended problems of the society so that he can develop a new model. And how can we do that? We give him, right in the beginning, start hand-holding him. Through assignments, we give him something novel to do. Through class activities, we give him something to do. We give him a project to work in a group, work alone, work in a group. Start doing the assignments right from the day one. And he has to start working on open-ended problems. The teacher may be a guide, but the teacher just shows light in the tunnel. The student has to solve and attack open-ended problems. He has to do a lot of work. And what does these open-ended problems require? They require constructing a new model. You have to get all your previous knowledge and algorithms and abstract knowledge to construct a new model. Establish the requirements for the model. Employ all your skills, right? Learning a single algorithm, to a black box training, to using libraries, to using your maths, to using your statistics. You have to employ everything. And the problem is then you have to communicate the results and you have to tell the limitations. And I found that this was constantly difficult. This was difficult to teach. But walking with the student makes it possible for us to teach this to the student as to how to solve a problem, not only in ML, but in real life. And the difficult aspect is the student is not really able to appreciate that he has to take the design decisions. And most importantly, he has to switch now. He has to think from the problem of solving the problem, from the dimension of solving the problem, rather than thinking about machine learning as a one-size-fits-all algorithm. So it's not a machine learning problem that he is solving a real life problem. And the student is again perplexed because he thinks that he has learned algorithms, but he does not know which algorithm to apply. There's a problem of plenty. There are a lot of algorithms and the student is overwhelmed. And once the model is made, my observations are articulating its difficult. You can analyze the model's performance, but how do you articulate it? How do you communicate it to others? How to analyze the performance? How do you describe the limitations of your model the student has made? And how can it be reused? So anybody can take a data set, anybody can put a lot of algorithms in, but then how do you really perform? How do you really explain it to others? How do you explain it to yourself? So what I tried is that I always hammer the students, iterate and tell the students that the model is as good as your data. If you have data, proper data, and you're able to prepare the data, you are able to clean the data, you are able to put the data into right format, if you are able to find out the right features from the data, and then use the right algorithm, probably you will get the right result. And this you have to learn by trying out open-ended problems. And we found that even after this, the students find it difficult to communicate their results. Relating it with technical terms, relating the world with the machine learning world is something which is difficult. So my observations are that it's not the nuts and bolts that make ML difficult. It is not the algorithms that make ML difficult. It's not the algorithms, it's not the statistics, it's not the math, it's not the programming. It is not individual aspects that make ML difficult. What makes ML difficult is the design, evaluation, and communication of the engineering process that goes into it. And the students struggle with the engineering process rather than the nuts and bolts. How to design, how to evaluate your design, how you communicate your results in a technical manner is something that the students find it difficult to fathom. So what is the outcome of so many years of my teaching? I find that the students do not get stuck on individual concepts, but on the development and evaluation of models and communicating their engineering decisions. So friends, how to teach ML? How to really make the students come out with flying colors in such courses? So we say, let's define the learning goals. The learning goals should make a transition from task-specific skills to combining skills to build a model, and finally applying skills to solve a problem, a known problem, then to an unknown problem. So we move from learning algorithms to then combining our skills to build a model and then solve a problem, not an ML problem, solve a societal problem, solve an engineering problem. How do we plan the subject? We know that the students have a lot of misconception, preconception, lack of conception. So what can a faculty do? It can take this into account. We know that there is a jazz in the market. We set and define appropriate learning outcomes for lectures, assignments, and assessment. So friends, let's see, we have an ordinance in IIIT Allahabad which you can also adopt or think of, or at least adopt in your teaching and learning process. We have a choice and credit linked continuous assessment and award ordinance, which facilitates constructive alignment for effective teaching and learning in all courses, especially machine learning. Let's look, how does it look at everything? And how does it really felicitate machine learning teaching? So first we see that for effective teaching and machine learning, we should have constructive alignment. Align teaching method and assessment to learning activities. And then define what are the learning outcomes. So if you know what are the learning outcomes, and we know that learning outcome is to be able to solve a real-time country problem, a real-time societal problem, that is our learning outcome. So here's the golden triangle, and all of them should aid and communicate with each other. Each buttresses, each actually strengthens the other, and hence all of them should go hand in hand. You should go through the entire course, of the semester, entire duration of the semester. The teaching learning activity, the continuous statement assessment, which checks whether the learning outcomes have been reached or not, achieved or not, and then again to go back to teaching and learning activity. And this should go on through the entire duration of the course of the semester. So we should go in for a component-based teaching and machine learning. What is that? First, the lectures. There should be a monologue. I should just give the concepts. I should just tell what is it. And then there should be a tutorial in which I tell the students whether you have been able to grasp or not. What is it? What is the inside story? The story I told you, but what is inside the story? How do you do it yourself? Can you go in for a discussion? Can you go back and study in detail? Can you really work out small problems? Can you answer some questions off hat? Can you present your ideas? Because as we saw that presenting and communicating your model and activities was the most difficult thing to do. Can we have activities so that the student can absorb and assimilate? Can he really practice? Can he do and implement? Because ultimately, solving a problem in machine learning is implementation. Can he implement? Can he implement a system? Can he use the skill which he has acquired? Yes. Then again we say, how do you organize lectures? So, okay, we dwell only on concepts. And then there should not be any tyranny of the content. We should not have 200 slides and spray them on the students and pray that he has learned. No. The student must be in a position to assimilate whatever he has learned. He should be able to appreciate and get excited by the concepts in the lecture. And in tutorials, he should be in a position to come back and tell you. Why? Because if I read it, since it is what students do rather than hear, that leads to learning, teaching, and his teaching methods that force the students to be active can be very effective. So I need to have all my students on my toes and make them do something in my tutorials, make them do something in their practice, clarify their doubts, clarify their misconceptions, clarify the concepts, make them use their concepts, newly acquired skills, and take a decision. And how can they do that? Remember, no problem has been solved alone. So you make them groups, heterogeneous groups. The captain of the Indian team is not given a team of his choice. The team is given to him. Likewise, we make the groups to him. We don't ask him to make his own group and then ask him to work in a group. How then solve a project, do problem-based learning. And then the most important part, the assessment. The student should not know that he is being assessed. He should be excited in learning, not really terrified into being quizzed, terrified into being into examinations. So that assessment should be an assessment of what he has learned, not what credits he is going to get. And should be very, very comprehensive, very, very exhaustive. It should be multi-dimensional. It should be seeing what the student has been able to learn in a very, very holistic manner. So you must have review tests, you have quizzes, you have tutorials, you have assignments, you have practicals, you surprise the student and then make him work in a project, make him discuss whatever he has done. And if he can do that, then he'll be a richer man as he walks out of your course. And then, my friends, we say that there should be a project. And I told you that it should be an open-ended project, a project which we may not be able to solve. And this is a special course. How do you evaluate that? You assess him on the problem definition. If you identify the problem, you are half done. So if you are able to identify the problem that you have, you get a lot of appreciation. Find out what others have done. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find out the methodology to be adopted for the project. Learn from your friends, communicate to your friends, learn from your mentor. And then, as soon as you have done it, then you start looking at it from a holistic, from far away. You conduct the experiment, go into nuts and bolts and go into a holistic view. Implement. And we know that when you're implementing, whether it's black box or you go into implementing your own algos, making your own model, that's where you're really learning. That's where you're knowing that machine learning is not about machine doing things, but it's about you guiding the machine into doing things. And communicating with friends may be easier. Communicating and teaching the machine to do and learn will be very difficult. So we develop and we ask the students to implement, and then finally make a draft report. Make a draft report of whatever he has learned, and then try to assess. So he has to make a draft report which has these discussions, which he has to walk through the difficulties that he had. Because in machine learning, he has to really see what were his prerequisites, the math, the theory, whether the algorithm really converged or not. So he has to have not just the design, the implementation, but also the analysis in which he has to have the algorithm really going to work or not. And finally, he has to really, at the end of the day, go to final presentation, give a demonstration, defend what he has done. And then, friends, it's not evaluation. It's not being tested. He is seeing his own baby at the end of the day. And he is now a machine learning practitioner. So friends, this is machine learning teaching according to me. Teaching the student as to how to teach the machine is what, according to me, is machine learning. And thank you. Thank you for your listening to me. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Javed?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think I made it quickly.
It was wonderful, sir.
I'm ready for questions.
It was cut.
Sir,
It's good.
can I have questions?
Thank you, Professor Shekhar Verma ji, for covering and uncovering the various aspects of understanding, misunderstanding, and non-understanding of machine learning. We hope our participants have understood the significance of man, not the machine, as far as machine learning is concerned. Now I request Professor Venkatesh Murthy to take this session.
Thank you, sir. Very fine presentation by Professor Verma.
Thank you, sir.
Machine learning has become very important, as you say, as you put it, because of the news. Employability. Machine learning, people are attempting since 1960s. During machine learning, in the sense, in general, artificial intelligence, people are working on during 1960s. In the first phase, during 1960s, failed because machines were not capable of handling AI problems, including machine learning. Then again, it came up during 1980s. Somehow or the other, it went out of sight because some other things came. Only machine learning has become very important these days. Yes, technology is required in order to improve our quality of life. Quality of life in the sense we need intelligent machines to help us in the routine life. There in the machine learning, what is to be learned, what is to be done has been explained very well by our Professor Sharma. For the last 49 years, out of which about 25 years I am teaching computer science. Computer science people, information science people shy away from mathematics, shy away from algorithms. They concentrate only on coding, whether it is C programming or Fortran programming, it was earlier, or your C++, Java. They get a job and do away with that. That's how this has become difficult. Yes, as Professor Sharma puts it, it is mathematics which is very important, particularly probability and statistics queuing theory. As I've seen, it is one of the very important things along with algorithms. People need not bother about very complex algorithms at the beginning. Yes, simple algorithms, let them do it. Then let them not, that was his contention. Let them not worry about designing very good algorithms, fresh algorithms. Use the present algorithms, build models, convert models into the black boxes, and into the block process, give real data into that one, converting data which you get either from the cameras or whatever it is, convert them into text, convert them into vectors, put into machines, get the output. And trying to understand the output itself is one of the very important aspects, as Professor Sharma puts it. Yes, this gives an idea of what is to be there in the course content of a machine learning language. Yes, this is the total summary of what I have understood from him. He has really done. Yes, he says how to teach it. Give open-ended problems to the students. Let them succeed 50%. Let them succeed 40%. If their approach is fresh, they have learned sufficiently. That's what he says. That open-ended problems will help students thinking afresh. And then he has said one thing. There is strength in unity. That is, group discussions, group projects must be taken up, and it should be done. That's what he is telling, and that's what he is trying. Then I think that's what he was trying to tell us. Yes. If anything I have left out, please, audience or our other people may add to it.
Yes, Shambhuling.
If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take.
Now I request Shubhangi Madam to take over the question and answer session.
Thank you, sir. It's an excellent talk on machine learning. With your kind permission, so I will ask few queries. So one of the queries from my guide, Dr. Prakash Hiremed, sir. So sir has told us to please discuss more on tuning model parameters and the maths required for the same.
Okay, ma'am. So first, I would like to thank you, my chair, Professor Venkatesh Murthy. I think it was what he told about the lecture was more than I had thought about the lecture. So wonderful. I think he has added new dimensions to the lecture, which I never thought of. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to meet you in person at your place. I think I'm overwhelmed. Thank you so much, sir. And about the question now, see, when I'm talking about tuning, there are 2-3 things I wanted to tell you. When a neural network, for example, is trained, or when you fit a curve, then you can go through all points. So you can have a curve which is a zigzag curve, if you follow my hand. But then that is not generalization. So when we say you tune the parameters, you tune 2 things. Number one, you say that you regularize so that you don't overfit, so that you are able to generalize. Generalization means tomorrow if an unknown input comes, you are able to do it. And this is what are known as regularization parameters, which need to be tuned. Tuned in the sense that you cannot have any amount of regularization. You cannot say that you can only regularization will become important. So if I give you an example, suppose I say y is equal to a naught x plus a1 square or a2 square. So this is something which is a second order polynomial which will fit on all points. But then I say that the value of the coefficients a0, a1 and a2 should not be very large, so that this curve is a smooth curve. So when I say this, I should not be saying that a0, a1 and a2 should have very small values or very large values. I must be in a position to check and over again retrain and say that what should be the optimal values of the range of a0, a1 and a2, so that the model does not underfit. It should not that it should give a straight line, or it should not overfit and pass through all the points. So what happens is, this is what is tuning. So suppose you have a loss function, then the loss function should not be very large. The loss function should not be so less that it actually learns by rote. So for generalization and for learning, you need to tune. And this tuning is something which is learned through practice and experience and through retraining. There's one question which I'll take it. How do you really do it? Do all this continuous assessment over the entire class with a good class strength? I think this has come from Dr. Bharti RK. Dr. Bharti, I'll tell you two things. Number one, we have been doing it in IIIT Allahabad. Please come to IIIT Allahabad and see how we are doing it. But coming to telling you, hinting you how it has been done, right from day one, we give small problems to students, challenge their mind, and then they keep on doing it, but we see to it that the total amount of working that the student has to day per day is say not more than 9 hours. So within that, he learns to enjoy. We make groups and then give them problems. We challenge them, ask them to present the solutions to the teaching assistants that we have. And the teacher also comes and sees. So if you are able to plan over the entire semester, I think it's not difficult. Obviously, it's great involvement. It's great learning and enjoyment as well. And obviously we have been doing it, so it's doable.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, one more question is there from my side. So during the experimentation, one thing had been observed, sir, especially in support vector machine classifier, which is giving the better classification results with low-level feature set. Whether you will suggest some other classifiers which will give the better results for low-level feature sets, sir?
Ma'am, what I'll do is, since the SVM is only a binary classifier, I would suggest that you move to kernel. See, the idea of nowadays SVM giving good or bad results is depends on the kernel that you have. So it's better that you concentrate on the kernel and pre-processing and the ensemble SVM. That means you have multiple SVMs looking with different kernels and looking at different features, and then optimizing this particular ensemble optimizer or machine learning algorithm or technique which has multiple SVMs, each with different multiple kernels, is giving wonderful results with low features rather than a single SVM. Moreover, twin SVMs, and Dr. Sonali would know about this a little more, are giving wonderful results. So with low level features, and one more thing, ma'am, it's not necessary that you get your features handcrafted. What is being done is a part of the CNN is being used for feature extraction, followed by SVM, which then works in the features. What I want to emphasize on is that the features is the features which are important. It's not the algorithm ultimately that you throw at the data which is important.
Yes, sir. In one of my paper, so I had worked on the hybrid classifier. I took the fusion of on handwriting analysis, sir.
Can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Sir, means to develop the best hybrid classifier, which classifier you will suggest from your side with multi-class SVM classifier, sir?
Ma'am, I would suggest that since handwriting is a bit tricky, I would suggest that you use a CNN to extract the features followed by an ensemble SVM. However, I would also suggest that instead of using a CNN, if you use a graph neural network, because in handwriting, there is a lot of relational dependencies that have to be preserved, which CNN does not preserve. So I would suggest that you try what is known as a geometric deep learning or a geometrics GCN, graph convolutional neural network, to extract the features followed by an SVM, which would be an ensemble SVM, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is one more question is there in the chat box from Amarnath ji. What is the scope of research in machine learning for the fresh engineers?
I think for the fresh engineers, there's a lot of scope because most of the teachers come with a lot of baggage. And for fresh researchers, they are able to look at the problem and not the machine learning. So I think the fresh engineer is the best person to do wonderful things. I think he has a lot of scope because nowadays learning, working on systems is something that this is a forte of an engineer, not of a teacher, not of a regular researcher, not of a researcher whose bread and butter is research.
Yeah, sir, right, sir, I'm agree with you. Sir, there is one more question from Pooja Patil. She has asked, sir, how data sets and standardized. For example, when working with the data sets, database of the images, researchers resize the images to any convenient dimensions.
Ma'am, I think Dr. Pooja, what I would say is that creating data sets is a research of its own. Making standard data sets is a research that needs to be done. And what researchers are doing is not a very is a wrong thing which they are doing. They are doing a disservice because you are working with somebody else's data set for your own problem. So you should be in communication with the standard data sets and then do things rather than using all a data set which is there. So a standardized data set is something which is created out of research. It's not that you just take the data set and then give it.
Sir, there is a, shall I ask sir few more queries?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah. Sir, there is one query is there from Vasanthamma H. Ma'am has asked regarding, can we give a open-ended problem to solve? Is this possible to learn and solve in a semester?
I would say not all open-ended problems are solvable, but the learning that you have is great. And it's the learning which is important. It's not the solving the problem which is important, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Sir, one more question is there from Suresh R. How to decide weight are associated with the input models in neural network, input nodes in neural network?
Yes, ma'am. I'll tell you that this is a huge area of research of deep geometric learning. If Mr. Suresh can go and see, so learning the affinity between the data points, which are, for example, our research group in IIIT Allahabad works on this area and assumes that the data is lying on a Riemannian manifold, and then use that Riemannian manifold assumptions to find out the affinity between data. There's another research group which we work with closely in Stanford, known as SNAP. And if he can go and see, that works on how to find out the affinity between data points without assuming anything. So the affinity can be distance-based, the affinity can be statistical, the affinity can be domain-based, or for that matter, anything. So affinity is decided from the domain and on the basis of assumptions that we make. And yes, this is a very, very active area of research as of today. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, last question from Hemant Kumar.
Yes.
What is the scope of contemporary advancement in the segmentation technique to improve the classification accuracy?
Ma'am, the segmentation techniques which are being used now are actually the cutting edge research of what are known as meta-learning research, in which you teach people to learn. You learn, some other algorithm learns, and then with a very you learn to do your things. For example, if you have learned how to ride a bicycle, within a second or two, you're able to ride a motorcycle. So meta-learning to segment is the current area of research in segmentation algorithms.
Thank you, sir. There is a question from Professor Manohar Madhu from Kerala Institute of Technology. How to decide the number of neurons in the neural hidden layer in the neural network?
Ma'am, this is something which cannot be decided, has to come from domain knowledge. For example, biological people say that we first increase the dimension, it is known as a unit, or we skip and we say we drop the weights, so that there is generalization which is known as a case of dropping. And there is no method for doing it. It's your intuition, it's your experience, and if you're not able to do it, contact Professor Venkatesh Murthy, who has a lot of experience in the area. I think nobody can teach you this.
Thank you, sir. We are receiving a huge number of queries, so there is a request.
No, that should be sufficient.
Yeah, we'll push some of the queries, selected queries to our honorable speaker, and send our answers, or we'll communicate through mail.
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I am really honored for giving me this opportunity, to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, to my own director, Professor P. Raghabhushan, who has really given us a great audience on new classification. And I'm obviously overwhelmed by my session chair, Professor Venkatesh Murthy, as I said.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Either in IIIT Allahabad or in Bangalore, wherever you wish.
Yeah, we will meet, sir. We will meet, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
I am also thankful to everybody, Dr. Nagbhushan, Dr. Verma, Dr. Kulkarni,
Thank you,
Shubhangi,
sir.
and everybody there. Thank you, sir. All the
Thank
best.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. In fact, I had a question. Anyhow, now with this, I thank Professor Shekhar Verma ji for handling this session in a very candid manner, and I also thank Professor M.G. Venkatesh Murthy sir for presiding the chair. Now with this, we have completed session 1 of day 3. I request you to join the session 2 at 12 noon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shekhar Verma.